Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War News Update, the first part thereof for the 15th of March 2025. I've done a breaking news update this morning. I had to go and take my boy to play football in a league match, and he's now in hospital as he's done his leg in. I'm going to see if it's broken. I don't think it is, but certainly a real shame. He was the most dangerous player on the pitch and played the first half and then got clattered and came off the worst. So, yeah, I might have to have a little bit of a disjointed approach to content released today because England are playing rugby and I've got to watch that and I've got to pick up my boy from hospital at some point. He's there with his mum. It's all right. I haven't left him. Okay. Well, I have. I'm here. Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, and you can find those caveats in the description to the video below. No Andrew Perpetual loss list because he said it was a distinctly low. In fact, he said it was going to be one of the lowest days of visually confirmed losses to compile, and then he received a Magyar's birds video that was so huge it took him 3 hours to do, so he hasn't completed the list yet, but that video shoved it up to a fairly average day, so it's worthwhile keeping that video in the stats. So I guess we'll see that at some point soonish. But in terms of the general staff figures, we have 1,180 personnel lost, 2 tanks, 15 troop-carrying AFVs, 28 artillery systems. That's over the daily average there. 1 multiple launch rocket system, 102 vehicles and fuel tanks. And a lower day than we have seen, indicating, I would have thought, that things are somewhat quiet in terms of Russian intensity of attacks. That's kind of what you understand from these figures, how much the Russians are attacking, because the Russians lose stuff when they're attacking. That seems to be the case, that the attacking side loses more than the defending side, because you're attacking with vehicles and stuff, and defenders are often holed up in buildings and trench lines, and they aren't using so many vehicles to defend, and therefore they don't lose as much defending. So that's the general stuff figures already. Interesting thread here. We won't go through the whole of it. It's quite a long one. Another Chriso wiki thread. Russian forces on the Dnipro River are suffering huge casualties. And I have heard this previously, which one soldier puts at 80% and an acute shortage of boats as well. Supplies as they attempt to make crossings against fierce Ukrainian opposition. Since Ukraine reconquered the right bank of the Dnipro in late 2022, Russian forces have repeatedly targeted Ukrainian positions in the unoccupied parts of the Kherson region. In recent months, there have been frequent unsuccessful attacks to cross the river. Russian difficulties in the area are highlighted by a video appeal to Vladimir Putin recorded by Ilya Leonidovich Nezhivenko, a member of Russia's 810th Separate Marine Brigade, before he was sent into a combat mission from which he appears to have not returned. Now, these guys were also sent up. I don't know if the entirety of them was sent up to Kursk to defend Kursk. These guys were getting a real bloody nose around the Kherson area where the in Krinky, where they were trying to push the Ukrainians out, and the 810th got absolutely mauled there. Then he went up to Kursk and then ended up eventually getting mauled there as well. He says that his unit is trying to cross at only one place. About 600 people have already died there. Those who managed to get to the other side are still missing. A lot are 200 dead. Those who are 300 wounded, they are being taken out. The battalion commander ordered not taking out the wounded, though. He says they're not being taken out, sorry. He says most of those who tried to cross are killed due to having to make the crossing in the open under constant fire. Quote, on this crossing, out of 10 people, only 2 survive who crossed, the rest of the 200. He asked for his commanders to be punished. Very high casualties have also been reported by the Ukrainian Crimean resistance movement Atesh in December 2024. It reported that an attempt by units of the 70th Motorized Rifle Division to storm the right bank ended in disaster. Entire platoons did not return, which seriously undermined the morale of the servicemen. Despite this, the military leadership continues to send its people to certain death, hoping to find a more advantageous place for the next landing. As a result, it says many soldiers are trying to avoid being sent to the assault boats. Many are making desperate attempts to get to the hospital to pay bribes for transfer to other positions or deliberately damaging equipment and weapons. And if you remember, I've done another thread on that where people were shooting themselves in the foot, destroying a boat, sabotaging their own engines on the boats and stuff like that. Atesh says that Russian soldiers intentionally break engines, puncture rubber boats, and even transmit coordinates to the Ukrainian defense forces about the location of boat bases and fuel reserves. They are then said to be deliberately injuring themselves. According to Atesh's 61st Separate Guards Naval Infantry Brigade has imposed increasingly harsh punishments on men refusing to participate in assaults on the Dnipro River islands downstream of Kherson city, and neither side is said to be fully in control of the islands. So on and so forth. It's just a bit of a disaster for the Russians there. Now, 4 Russian Pantsir S-1 air defense systems have been targeted by FPV drones. This is quite unusual, as we'll see in a second, because Pantsir S-1's air defense systems are going to be quite far behind the front lines. It's not the sort of thing that you end up having destroyed usually by FPV drones. You might have medium range drones, so the equivalent that the Russians use is the Lancet, to take out these kind of air defense systems. You don't generally see them taken out by FPV drones. So it's interesting that you got 4 caught on video being taken out by FPV drones, to which Trent Zelenko then says the range of Ukrainian FPV drones seems to be getting longer. Really good haul of targets taken out there by FPV drones. I mean, Pantsir S-1 air defense systems are highly valued systems that the Russians use. So that's excellent news for the Ukrainians. In the Sel River in Kurilovka, Kursk Oblast, an abandoned Russian BTR with supplies is half sunk in a river. Now, the only reason I include this is because it was on the Andrew Perpetual loss list last night. Or not last night, yesterday, when I showed it to you. There was like this, he had sunk a sunk infantry fighting vehicle, and this is it, evidently, with, goodness me, that's a frozen river, isn't it? With supplies being towed on the back as well. Obviously didn't manage to get across, and then possibly fell through the ice, so trying to drive across the ice. The Ravens drone unit, 248th Battalion, 129th Territorial Defence Brigade, used FPVs to strike the rest of it. From a long montage, there you go. So you can go and watch that. All these videos are linked in the description below. Just to let you know about Kursk, because as you know, I did a breaking news update last night. Donald Trump was lying insanely about Kursk. Indeed, we have the... I might as well bring that to the fore now. Institute for the Study of War has confirmed that there is no geolocation evidence of encirclement of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Kursk region. At the same time, Zelensky reported that the operation of the armed forces in designated areas of Kursk does continue. And Tatarigami, as a Ukrainian intelligence analyst, says our team has a good understanding of the situation in Kursk. There are no encircled troops. The retreat was generally organised but occasionally chaotic. There's no threat of encirclement and no evidence suggests otherwise. It's wise to rely on intelligence and not Putin's word. Additional note, in the context of the Donald J. Trump post, quote, there are no encircled troops, is a direct address of a claim, quote, thousands of Ukrainian troops are completely surrounded. There are small squads in pockets and retreating on foot, but it accounts for less than 1% of the troops there. This is insanely irresponsible of Donald Trump. And you put that together with the breaking news update I did this morning of other lies he is saying, or ridiculous things. Not quite a lie. Well, yeah, I guess it is a sort of lying approach to what Ukraine is doing. Is in that Ukraine is picking on why are Ukraine picking on the bigger side here? As if like being invaded is picking on someone. It's just, honestly, and what's fascinating is that Keir Starmer, I just heard him on the radio coming back from the hospital. Keir Starmer was on LBC News because he's convening this meeting today of 30 countries who are a coalition of the Winning Plus. And his rhetoric was diametrically opposed to Trump's, and it was brilliant. It was like, right, here are the 3 problems. We've got to, give peace through strength, and we've got to do that by providing them with X, Y, and Z, and doing this and doing that. And it's like, and Putin is not taking peace seriously, and blah blah blah, like everything you would expect Donald Trump to be saying, but he's not saying, was said by Keir Starmer. Just bish, bash, bosh, there you go. And it's obvious. It's like, yep, he's not serious about doing peace, trying to string it out. So we need to do this, we need to do that, and we need to do this. And that's what we're going to talk about. Thank you very much to the TV camera crews. You can go out now because we've got a private conversation to work out these 3 different areas. And it was, yes, that's obvious. Like, I shouldn't be celebrating you saying that, but I am celebrating Keir Starmer saying that and doing that and convening this meeting, because it appears that Donald Trump is abrogating his responsibility of Commander-in-Chief of the United States. It's just complete insanity is going on at the moment. Now, a couple of, I mean, this did the rounds last night. This is a Russian soldier supposedly stating that an order has been received not to attack Ukrainian military during the retreat from Kursk region. I reckon this is the Russians playing psyops with what Trump is being told by kind of Putin, that all these troops are surrounded, and this is Putin saying, hey, look, it's all right, we won't take them out, we won't kill them, even though they're not surrounded, and this is not happening. That's my guess, is this is just complete psyops from the Russians. But it's easy to do psyops like that when the leader of the United States is putty in your hands. It's just insanity. Russian forces reportedly captured advanced Western military equipment after Ukrainian troops left Kursk. So the Ukrainian troops did have what I think is a disastrous end to the Kursk campaign. There's no doubt about that. Like, they pulled out, the supply got hit, they were getting hit with artillery, multiple launch rocket systems, and this Rubicon drone setup. And it was a bit of a nightmare, and they ended up pulling out. And any kind of operational withdrawal, you are going to lose a lot of equipment. So among the equipment lost, M1 Abrams tanks, apparently, M2 Bradleys, and M777 howitzers as well. And here is another howitzer, another M777 captured. So that could well be the 4th one we've seen now, or the 3rd one from Kursk. At any rate, the other one was Severodonetsk. So lots of equipment I think we are going to see on the loss list from Kursk being captured. Konstantin, another Ukrainian, says the situation from Kursk. 1, there's no encirclement of our troops whatsoever. Not a single unit is cut off. 2, the troops have gained freedom of maneuver and short logistical routes. 3, our soldiers are holding a tactically advantageous defensive line, several heights along the state border on Russian territory. Holding these heights plays a key role in defending our border zone. 4, at the moment there's no threat of a large-scale offensive on Sumy and the Sumy region with significant forces. Attacks by small groups are possible, but only over short distances without the ability to advance far. That's coming from Yuri Butazov, a Ukrainian journalist who's someone to take seriously. When it's going bad for Ukraine, he says it. And as someone who regularly speaks with Ukrainian units on the ground, Konstantin says, I can confirm this. Okay, it's worth then throwing in this. I had this down for later. This is... No, it's not there. Where do we have it? There are claims that the Russians are getting ready to attack in Sumy. So that's kind of going against, to a degree, what was just stated there. I'm sure I've got that. Where do we have that? Do we not have that coming later? No. Yeah, well, it was there. I just can't read. Zelensky. Russia is massing forces along Ukraine's eastern border, signaling attack on Sumy region. This proves Moscow plans to ignore diplomacy and prolong the war. We understand this and will counter it. Partners must see Putin's intent and prepare accordingly. Ukraine is ready to share real intelligence. So there's a bit of a conflict of... Yeah, so Tataragami and Konstantin there, well, at least Konstantin's Yuri Butazov quote, indicates that the border along Sumy is well defended and only small DRGs and whatnot will be able to attack. There's no amassing of large Russian forces, but then Zelensky says there are large Russian forces, but they should be able to deal with them. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Right, Sam Bendit is a little thing on drones here. Quick take by a Russian mill blogger on the drone, counter-drone tactics in the Touretsk area. This is a Russian Telegram channel. Usual caveats apply. Translation as follows. Quote from a Russian. Yesterday I spoke with assault units who had just come out of heavy head-on combat. Here's what I didn't like about their feedback. Ukrainians can use up to 20 FPV drones on one Russian fighter. We can't do that. The proportions of drone use. 60 enemy drones fly in in for every 6 hours. So that is saying that in the Touretsk area, the Ukrainians have a 10-to-1 drone advantage based on a specific battle in one high-rise building. Ukrainians are completely focused on drone madness. Artillery has faded into the background, although it is actively used and they have shells. Now, some good news from the world of anti-drone warfare. We, the Russians, use ropes with neodymium magnets and shoot down their Mavics with our Mavics. Shotguns are arriving for our troops. They couldn't tell me the brand. 5-shot semi-automatic. Baikal MP155 is the most likely. The guys praise it for its reliability. Several guys in the group have muzzle attachments for AKs, 400 pellets, fired with a blank cartridge. It's called the Thunder muzzle brake. It costs about 3,500 rubles. Shot pattern is up to 2 meters. As the manufacturer writes, even a clumsy person can hit it, the drone. And as for the point 4 above, says Sam Bendit, Russians are describing tactics when a quadcopter flies with suspended ropes so they can entangle adversary quadcopter rotors when the targeted drone is approached from above. And I presume then that detaches from the magnets keeping it attached to the drone. If you pull it, if the other drone gets entangled, then it pulls the ropes kind of off the drone rather than pulling the other drone down with it. So there are counter-drone measures that appear to be being quite successful, but it's really difficult when you are at a 10-to-1 drone disadvantage, as the Russians appear to be, at least in Touretsk. So that's incredible. Right, moving on to distant strikes. No report says Ukraine's Air Force reports a massive Shahed drone attack last night after one with very, very few the night before. Out of 178, so 178 were launched, 130 shot down, 38 were lost in location, taken down by electronic warfare. So that leaves 10 out of 178. Quite a few drones getting through still. Russia also sent in 2 ballistic missiles, Iskander-M ballistic missiles. Don't know the results of them. But we do know that Dnipropetrovsk and Odessa regions were targeted, energy facilities particularly. DTEC Energy Facilities, that's a private company that runs a bunch of energy facilities. Russian strikes caused severe damage, leaving parts of both regions without power. Energy workers are working to restore the electricity there. And yeah, Tim White reported last night Chornomorsk, a town about 20 kilometers south of Odessa, was the scene of explosions. And indeed, today he says in Odessa region, it was mainly Chornomorsk, which is without power, but the city itself was also hit. Odessa. That is a 61-year-old woman injured and a 53-year-old man in Chornomorsk. Emergency services released these photos of their workers going about working. And then also it's even worse for Ukraine's emergency workers in Kharkiv region, who again came under fire in a double tap strike. So that is, for those who don't know, when they strike a place, the emergency services come to save people's lives and help usually civilians to survive, and then a second missile goes and hits it purposefully to take out the emergency services. A drone strike hit a college in Bohoduykiv. An hour later, another hit, damaging a fire truck and school bus, and 4 civilians were also injured. And there we have it. So I don't know if these were ballistic missiles sent there or what. Right, on to Ukrainian strikes. So Ukraine themselves sent over 100 drones apparently into Russia. More than 100 Ukrainian drones attacked Russian regions this night. In Volgograd, the target was a Lukoil oil plant. Media reported debris from a downed drone caused a fire near Lukoil's oil refinery in Volgograd. Russia's defense ministry claimed on the night of March 15th, Russian forces intercepted 126 Ukrainian drones, with more than half of them over the Volgograd region. Well, it does seem like there is some serious fire going on at the Lukoil oil refinery after that drone attack. It looks a little bit more than just drone debris coming down. Explosions continue to thunder over Volgograd. Preliminarily, the Ukrainian armed forces are attacking the city with PD-2 and Lyuti drones. From 15 to 20 loud sounds have already been heard over the city. And lots of attention being paid to Volgograd. Indeed, today, and again, I would suggest that this isn't just drone debris. A column of thick smoke rises over Volgograd following a nighttime Ukrainian drone attack. Just seeing if there's any other details in those. No. Then in Valuki in Belgorod, there was some kind of destruction there. There's been a bit of talk about, I don't know if it's this one. So the idea here is, because there's a train depot picture, satellite picture put next to it. The idea is that was a train depot. I have heard from a couple of sources that the Ukrainians are targeting train depots inside the Russian borders that are integral for deploying Russian troops into Ukraine and logistics. And you might ask about time, why is it taking so long? But I don't know. It appears that there might be some focus on rail depots. Now, Tuapse that was hit not last night but the night before is still on fire. This was last night where it was still burning big time. In fact, a second tank had caught fire there and is burning in Tuapse, which is on the Black Sea. We then see today that it is still burning big time. I know that was yesterday daytime, I think. So someone on a train. Then it was still burning at night. Second one is on fire, and I think this is today. Meanwhile, the Russian town of Tuapse, the oil refinery, has been burning spectacularly for the second consecutive day. Judging by the footage compared to yesterday, the fire has expanded its reach and is now engulfing other tanks. So that looks to have been a very successful strike on that oil refinery. Now, there was a fire in Novorossiysk, which is where the Russian Black Sea Fleet is now positioned. But I think it's been thought, I think this is at the garbage site, like the rubbish dump, and grass fires nearby. So I don't know that it is actually, it might not even be to do with strikes, but it could well be as well. There is a large fire raging in Novorossiysk, said Tendar yesterday. The port city is home to the remnants of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, which had to flee from Sevastopol. What else do we know? David D, I think, yeah, this is a talk about the railway. So now that Ukraine is hitting rail yards, the 100,000 Russian troops, combat and combat support, can't use the rail system to get back to occupied Ukraine. That's a long truck ride. So, as I say, there are people talking about that. Now, Paul Sweeney sent me some firms images that were absolutely huge. This was from earlier last night. So this last one was kind of 2:40. Let's have a look. My time. Yeah, 2:40 my time in the morning. I don't know where Paul is actually situated. So this one was 2:40 and things had calmed down. But from earlier, you can see the huge number of fires. And it's important to note, mainly in Russia and Russian-controlled areas. So this is the Russian-controlled Ukraine. All right, this is going to be sort of Berdyansk and Mariupol. And that's going to be that's pretty much going to be along the front line. But all of this is either in Russia or occupied Ukraine. This is Russia, Rostov-on-Don, Krasnodar, and whatnot. You're going to have Tuapse, I think it's probably down here. Novorossiysk as well, or unless Tuapse's up here. But anyway, now some of these might well be gas flares going off from. So around here, I think there are some oil or gas infrastructure sites that might not suggest that things are being blown up, but this is pretty. There's some pretty heavy fires going on there yesterday, and I think that's really good news for the Ukrainians because even later on in the evening, when a lot of those had died down, there was still some pretty significant red dots, and some of these red dots, when you go in on them closer and closer, they're can be 6 different instances of fire. So it's not just a single fire all the time there. But yeah, thanks to Paul Sweeney for sending me that firm's data. It's really, really interesting. Now, worth noting that the two SAMP-T and anti-aircraft batteries that Ukraine has, these are the Patriot equivalents provided by the French and Italians. They have apparently all but run out of missiles, with France and Italy not capable of providing replacements fast enough. There is talk, and I'll be talking about this in the military aid update, that France, Italy, and I think the UK are going to be coming together to build these at quite a snip, but they really obviously need to by the looks of it, and they also need more of those batteries. But yes, so that's slight worry there. That's being reported by an Italian media outfit. Right, now let's move on to other bits and pieces. So, Trump on ceasefire. Trump is basically fully on Russia's side, so don't expect him to do anything to support Ukraine. It's going to be all about Europe supporting Ukraine. You can forget you can forget the US. Although it does seem that the minerals deal is still on. It's basically completely ready to sign. They've broadly agreed it, I believe. But Trump said yesterday, we've had some pretty good news coming from out of Russia. We're hearing good things, which I presume means Russia want peace as long as they get maximalist objectives achieved. So yeah, worth reminding ourselves of footage of some of these places. I was in Pokrovsk. I was in Pokrovsk in February 2024, and it was not a frontline town there. And of course, now with Avdiivka falling, since then it has become a frontline town, and it is absolutely hammered by the Russians on a regular basis. So there you go. It just gives you an indication of what liberation looks like. This is literally Russian liberation. There you go. That's what they do when they move in to liberate towns. They turn them into rubble and end up destroying them. So that is Pokrovsk, sadly enough. Now, one Ukrainian unit accepting foreign volunteers has received a few thousand applications after the Oval Office meeting between Zelensky and Trump. Interesting. So that could have acted as not only a mobilizer for European political unity and support, but also a mobilizer, literally a mobilizer for the Ukrainian army, at least for foreign volunteers there. So yeah, something to keep an eye on, I guess. Anton Gerashenko talks about how 42 state-owned enterprises in the Russian-occupied part of Donetsk region have stopped paying salaries to employees since the beginning of the year. Z correspondent Yulia Andriyenko has reported on her Telegram channel. According to her, no one tells people anything, gives them any deadlines, and says for how long they should not eat, drink, pay rent, buy medicine, and go to work solely on foot. This is how Russia cares for the people of Donbass. That is liberation. That's what liberation looks like. And just another example of how the Russian economy is struggling. These are truck sales in Russia with January to February, minus 37% year on year. February, minus 46% year on year. So this is a challenging time for the Russian economy. And there is just one example of how it is struggling. Okay, what do we have here? Oh, right. This is absolutely freaking shocking. So Putin has an arrest warrant on his head from the International Criminal Court for deporting children. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands of children deported from Ukraine, brainwashed and given out to families in Russia, etc., etc. Now, Yale has just confirmed that the state has terminated the contract in the statement. What contract are you talking about? So Trump's State Department quietly terminated a contract that was in the process of transferring evidence of Russian abductions of Ukrainian kids to European law enforcement. Two sources familiar with the situation tell me. This is reported in the New Republic. Why would you cancel a contract just as they're giving information of massive Russian war crimes to the Europeans to take the Russians to court with? Yale has confirmed that, saying researchers at the Humanitarian Research Lab were notified recently that government funding for their work on the war in Ukraine has been discontinued. It's absolutely sickening. Sickening. Igor Sushko, US State Department terminated a program investigating and documenting evidence of Russian genocide via abduction of Ukrainian children. These are literally the crimes for which the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Putin. I mean, it's either massive Doge irresponsibility or it's the US trying to side even more with Russia. Julia Davis says, Trump admin has nixed the contract helping kidnap Ukrainian kids. The fate of abducted Ukrainian children is a white-hot issue for peace negotiations, and it looks like the State Department may have just undercut the cause. She adds, under President Biden, the State Department strongly condemned the, quote, forcible transfer and deportation of Ukraine's children to camps promoting indoctrination in Russia. And the present administration has not said a single critical thing about Russia in 8 weeks. Not a single critical thing. Again, as I keep saying, it is absolutely despicable. It is despicable. The Trump administration concerning Ukraine is despicable. And there you go. Prove me wrong. Please do. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.